Mēs drīkstot sākt. Labvakar, labrīt, mani sauc Gustavs Terzens un man ir liels gods un prieks piekrist un šeit uzturēties arī pēc filmas un piedalīties šajā diskusijā. Paldies organizatoriem par šādu iespēju, jo filmu, kad noskatījos, ļoti nopriecājos, ka man būs iespēja arī pēc titriem vēl šeit nedaudz uzturēties un vēl pēc stundiņas parunājot ar pašu režisoru, kamēr jūs skatieties filmu, es esmu vēl dubultā pateicīgs par to, ka šeit var atrasties, jo tāds materiāls un tādi cilvēki šeit atbraukuši un vēl ir iespēja par to atsevišķi papļāpāt. Diskusija notiks angļu valodā, respektējot mūsu ciemiņu un organizatoru vēlmes, un es ceru, ka tulkotājs sev ir savā vietā. Un šeit mēs diskutēsim no skatuves uz jums un atbilžu un jautājumu sesiju, diemžēl nebūs laika ierobežojumu dēļ. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Gustav Terzens, and I will be a conductor of this discussion, post-film discussion. And I would like to start off with introduction of a director, Paul Refsdal. Please, Paul. We've just got acquainted with Paul, and we had a little discussion before film. And before I introduce you to all the other members, Paul, please take a microphone. And we know that this is not the first screening, and you confessed to me that it's always a bit tricky part when people don't understand whether they can or cannot laugh in this film.
Sometimes I sit with the audience and it's very different reactions, but usually it takes a while before they understand that you're actually allowed to laugh in a film where Al-Qaeda suicide bombers are. So, it's like a mental stage. They think that this is going to only be a horrific movie, and then it's, after a while they understand that these are people who make jokes and I'm allowed to laugh.
Paul, when was the last time you got any message of any of the characters?
I think it was about a week ago. Abu Qassara, he's in contact regularly with me. He say, "Oh, Saladin, I miss you so when you come back to Syria." And he always say that he want to do this operation, but quite frankly, I think he's happy with the work he's doing now.
So, what about the other two?
One character in the film is dead by now. That's a man you don't see, you don't hear his name. He's in the bunker, the one with the long hair and eyeliner. He was killed in fighting in May. The other two, they are alive, but I don't have any contact with them.
Thank you, Paul. The other partners of our discussion is as follows: Martin Hirsch, an expert in foreign affairs, let's call it that. Zane Peneze, journalist, documentarian, former colleague of mine and a friend, and she's been to Afghanistan and she's been to Syria right before the war break off, and we'll have very valuable opinions from Zane tonight. Rita Rudusha, media expert, a clergyman, Juris Talits, poet and translator and interpreter Ulds Berziņš, and Hossam Abu Meri, a doctor, a resident Latvian for 23 years already, and it's very nice of you, Hossam, that you could make it today. And Zana, I have a question for you. It was 2012, and we were working in the radio together, and you said to me that you're going off to Syria, and I remember asking you when you're going to be back, and you said, "We'll see."
I don't remember that.
And that was quite shocking for me. I knew you're, going there and make your journalist career was really important for you. But you went there in 2012. You made acquaintances with people. You stayed overnight with people in Damascus. And now, 4 years later, what do you see? Who are these people? Are you still in contact with them?
Well, I'm in contact with some of them. Some of them have left Syria, and they have been living in Turkey, in Iraq, in France. They are refugees, most of them actually, and that doesn't surprise me. But what surprises me is to check Facebook updates from those people who are still living in Syria to see that they're opening a new cafe They are making movies there.
Life goes on.
Life goes on, and that is hard to understand from what we see in the news. But it's so fragmented. It's always been fragmented. But the question of what's happening in Syria is without one answer. And I think the faces of human and the faces of human faces of people we have seen in this documentary takes us 1-2 steps closer to understand that they're real people. I remember that you were asking, like, well, why would you want to understand what they are fighting for? And I have always this I'm always trying to persuade other people that they are people with their own reasons to live there, to fight there, or not to live there. Like.
And the aftermath after Paul's film, the main things you've gathered for yourself?
I have really limited Arabic knowledge, but one word has stuck with me since I was in Syria, and it's Jannah, which means paradise. And I think that's one of the key words we need to keep in mind to if we want to try to understand what's happening there. Like Jannah is one of the really important words and like symbols to understand. And the other one is there's also a mindset of a warrior, a mindset of a soldier. And I think it doesn't really differ so much if you are Westerner or from Latvia, from Middle East. It's something, if you are living like a soldier, like a warrior, you put everything below your main goal, which is to fight.
Another question, and I'd like to Uldis Berziņš to take a microphone, please. And because Uldis experienced a time when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and this was on very enlarged context of Islam and that part of the world context coming to our shores, but through the prism of Soviet Union, because Soviet Union was invading Afghanistan, and it's many decades after we have another concept of Islam right now. Can you compare it from that point of view? You remember when USSR was fighting in Afghanistan, and now when it's another war there?
No, that was quite a different thing. That was a struggle of a nation against foreign occupation, against new colonialists coming from north with their pseudo-Marxist ideology. And the Afghan nation was struggling for its existence, I should say. Maybe I can say that. Maybe not, maybe too strong words, but for the state and for the right to live as they have decided to live. Now here we have a different situation. Here we have more than 2 or more than 5 different groups, religious conflict. And I should call all of them heretics, as all of them try, well, to establish themselves in the place of God, taking the seat of God and saying, God believes the way I believe. That's the difference. And the only way out of this is to accept that God knows better. We cannot say that the way we see the world, the humanity, and the God's aims is the only way to explain it. If you allow me, I would like to ask a question to Paul. There is one episode very interesting for me. That's when Abu Basir is gathering roses. and his comrades, his colleagues, so to say, says, "Oh, you are like Isil for the roses." So is he distancing himself as Al-Qaeda member from Isil, which is more cruel, who is decapitation of roses or human beings is connected with Isil's tactics? Or he speaks about, well, as something acceptable also for Jabhat al-Nusra. Is there a distance in what he says?
Thank you, Aldis.
Well, the answer is very easy. These two groups are in war with each other, and the people you saw in the film, they hate Islamic State. They say that Jabhat al-Nusra has lost more than 1,000 fighters to Islamic State, some in fighting and some being captured and beheaded actually by Islamic State. So the people there, and I am experienced that many times, they called Islamic State for Khawarij, extremists. I just want to add a little thing. You were talking about the difference with Afghanistan. You know, I was with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation. That was my first war in 1984. And the kind of the message of this film is that we try to change the image of insurgents or rebels according to how they fit into our world. At that time, you know, the Mujahideen, they were fighting the Soviets, so they were declared heroes in the West. And I saw that they were not, you know, they were not these people that we perceive them to be. Now the Islamic rebels, they are fighting against the interest, and they are, in all aspects, they are painted black. You know, they are painted like terrorists, fanatics, and you know, more or less animals. So that is my purpose of the film, is trying to show, you know, the everyday life, the human side of the people we regard as enemy.
Paul, while you are with the microphone, one additional question. As far as you left the figure of enemy an abstract in your movie, it was not defined visually or verbally. It was in a few moments, but not as a whole concept. Then, can you explain who are we to them? I mean, Latvian nation, Baltic states, the part of Europe Union. Who are we for them? Do they know about us?
Well, I thought when I arrived the first time to this group, I thought that they would be more negative, more aggressive towards West, because they were just being bombed by the Americans. But to my surprise, they didn't really care too much about it. I mean, it was like a matter of fact, yes, the Americans, they want to bomb us. But there was no aggression towards the West. They didn't talk too much about the West. They were making fun about, you know, some of the, let's say, hypocrisy of the West, like we saw in the film. But they didn't care too much about our life, so to say. And for sure, this group, they have no policy of attacking the West. Actually, they are not authorized. Any of the fighters, none of the fighters are authorized to do anything outside Syria. So they are only concentrating attacking the regime of Bashar al-Assad. That's the only aim they have.
But I noticed you said before that, I mean, everybody hates ISIL and ISIL hates everybody. What does it explain?
No, but Islamic State's a different thing. I mean, Islamic State, I don't know really what they want to achieve, but I mean, they're really going to get hammered, because they have really insulted or attacked or declared war on the whole world. Even this group, they have attacked other rebel groups. I mean, the Islamic State is like, in a way, I would say, in a way, like the Nazis, you know, it's either us or it's nothing, and they will get left with nothing, I think.
Thank you, Paul. Rita, a question for you as the media expert, and with Rita, we decided that we will use a lot of a term responsibility, which goes on to media as well as for media users, us, anybody who tweets and likes and shares something on social networks. When you see this film, that it's not exactly what I think West would want to see, what does it communicate from media view? So if you have to write a piece about this film in tomorrow's newspaper, what would you write?
Well, I'm not sure what West would want to see and what is West in your question, but
Us. Paul said it's us.
But I wanted first to applaud Paul for showing the world in its true complexity. And that is something that is badly missing from today's narratives, from today's world of very simplistic, outlandish statements that we inhabit. And media, of course, shares a huge burden of responsibility for portraying this world in very simplistic terms. You know, the media, and I would say we, because we are the media here, and we are also guilty of the same, of dehumanizing the enemy, of making the enemy this homogeneous mass, of not understanding the differences between ISIL and other groups, and not even trying, not even wanting to understand the differences, because of course simple answers are much easier and much easier digestible and much easier tweetable. So if I were to write anything on this film, those would be two main words, keywords is complexity and humanity, because again, we spend so much time and resources dehumanizing the world, be it suicide bombers, be it refugees, is just a faceless mass of people who present threat to us that breeds fear. Fear breeds radical policies, and we end up in this vicious cycle. And we as media, why we share responsibility, because our job is to communicate the world as it is in its complexity, as Paul does in his film, and to put things into context, into wider context of the world, to report on things keeping in mind the public interest and the human, bringing human to the center of the story. But we are so busy producing sensationalist headlines, and that goes, of course, very much for coverage of anything to do with suicide bombing, with Syria, with terrorism in more general terms, and so on.
Thank you, Rita. Hassam, you're here for more than 20 years, and you studied here, you work here. Have you acknowledged how anything like prejudice has grown into Latvian minds, reading and consuming information about Syria, about Islam, about Middle East? Have you noticed anything that has grown from something to something or changed?
You mean positive, something positive?
Anything. Please.
Do you think all these people who are sitting here today and watch this film, they will feel very comfortable and very safe? If we are talking about refugees, for example, and we know that we are waiting for 776 Syrian, and it's possible that one of these guys from Nusra will infiltrate and will come to Riga, for example.
Have you?
So I think that it's giving a negative impact, not a positive one. And I just was surprised when Paul finished with the word enemy. Who is the enemy in Syria? Bashar al-Assad is enemy? Or Nusra is enemy? Or ISIL is enemy? Or people of Syria are enemies? Who's the enemy there? It's a civil war. I've been living in Lebanon 16 years of my life in a civil war. And as Zani said, one street bombing, another street people working, going to job, opening a new cafe, people get married, children born, and so on and so on. And this is what's going on in Syria, it's civil war. So when the guys are saying that they are going to Jannah or paradise, if God exists, if their God exists, so would not be any war in Syria, and nobody would be killed there. So they just, I also surprised that I listened the Saudi Arabia accent, I listened the Syrian, the Jordanian, I listened the British guy accent, I listened the Yemenis accent, almost. So I was, I didn't see Syrian except one guy was from Syria there, one guy only. So what they are doing there in Syria, with whom they are fighting, Muslim against Muslim? Who is Bashar al-Assad? Who are these people, soldier, army?
And what do you think yourself?
I think myself that it is a big foolish game for all the people all over the world that there is a war in Syria, because it's not a Syrian war. It's an international war. It's not a war against al-Assad. I never support him. He's a dictatorial person. But I just meet people also in Lebanon who came from Damascus. And you know, Damascus is closer to Beirut. And people, they live under the Assad regime. And they're praying every day to God, give him more years and to be the president of Syria for 20, 30 years more. Because they see what? Jabhat al-Nusra, a part of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda responsible for 9/11. We forget the 9/11, we forget the Al-Qaeda job in different places in Europe and in different places in the world, and so on. So the situation, I think that Latvian people, after today, this film, they will not feel anymore comfortable
Hossam,
life.
I remember
to be a Muslim in Latvia, it would be maybe much more harder.
after this film.
Sure.
I remember when happenings in Egypt years ago happened. We and Zane, we invited you to the radio, and we also talked about it, and you were sort of explaining the father figure that those nations have, and we don't understand it, and the cultural differences, and the perception of power that we have. We actually don't have anything in common with it. And you said that we're pretty safe, and now that you are aligning things that we are forgetting. So what's gonna?
Here you mean?
Through Syria, you said we forget September 11. We even can't name the names of regimes we tried with Paul, Taliban, al-Nusra, you name it. I mean, who is who? And Al-Qaeda, who is who and where is where? It's all a homogeneous mass for us, a big mix. And have you seen have you seen and noticed us getting confused?
Sure.
How it happens?
Everybody is confused.
Yeah.
Everybody is confused. These groups are established by countries. So Saudi Arabia has her own group. In Iraq, there is a special group, belong to different Arab countries, maybe to the west, maybe to behind the ocean. So I don't believe that these people, what they are doing, they are laughing, they are joking. This guy, he was waiting on the list, martyr list for 5 months, and then he left. So they have a joke. And he said that his father against this. But he said, okay, we are 9, so one of us, if we will, how to say it, to be a gift for God to get the paradise. What a paradise they are talking about. Muslim in general, if he is going to attempt suicide, he's going to the hell, to the nar, whatever you are doing. You can't kill yourself. Your spirit doesn't belong to you.
That's actually in common in many religions. Yeah, hold it.
Let me say one word to you. The conflict between Alevis, Kizilbash, and Sundis is a real thing, historical thing, and so it's sociologically understandable.
Odi, while you have a microphone, and then Yuris, please elaborate. What are your thoughts on seeing our own fear building on this subject? How does it? What's the techniques that you see? How is it getting to us?
I don't feel any kind of fear. I don't feel it here. I just am praying to God to help those people come out of the mental hell in which they are now. That's all.
Yuri, please. The question was, how do you acknowledge and maybe follow from a side, working with people at your house? How do you see our public, Latvian public nation, having injected what we can call fear from Islamic State?
Every person's and every society's coefficients of fear is whatever it is. And the important question is what is able to remove or stifle or suppress fear. Everybody fears. We're afraid of life. And there are some obvious things that help. A film like this helps. I don't think it stimulates fear. I think it assuages fear. Because we can place ourselves in many of the situations that we saw. As Paul said, he wishes everybody would be free to laugh because it places us in the right place where we can laugh. And the place where we increase fear is the place where we begin to hate, where we shut off, where we close down. And that's the moment when the doors are shut and we're inside. We're afraid of what's outside if there's a noise. And that's the same for our minds and for our hearts. And that's why a film like this is a way to dissipate fear. And discussion is a way to dissipate fear. And the people who create the complexity for us help us to dissipate fear. Simplifying doesn't remove fear, but complexifying does, because life is complex. I mean, of course, every human being is wired to simplify. We don't like complexity. We like it simple. A, B, black, white, right, wrong, acceptable, not acceptable, for me, not for me. That's how our minds work, but that's not how life works. And an adult is someone who begins to relate to life where, as a child, just relates to some very simple clues and signals. And so I think that everybody fears, but we have ways of handling it as adults. And again, I repeat, having a film like this, or having good media, or having intelligent people who are not swallowing their own fear constantly, but are able to speak humanly, that helps.
Thank you, Joris. Rita, please.
I'm glad you mentioned good media, because bad media are instrumental in spreading fear. Say the terror attacks happened, and and I'm not talking about the film, I just need to make a footnote. A terror attack happens, and it is completely pointless if it's not magnified, because the point is not to kill this number of people. The point is to spread terror. And if we as media help spreading the terror, then we are, of course, co-responsible. Why did Le Monde and other media in France, for example, decided to stop publishing the pictures of terrorists, to stop naming them, and to be much more guarded in their coverage of such atrocities? Because they didn't want to be complicit in spreading fear. They want to stay away from terrorism porn, as it is referred to. So I think, yes, we need more good media that are treating these subjects responsibly.
Thank you, Rita. Martin, you have something to add here?
So I have a couple of things to add. One thing that I want to start with that a couple of people have touched upon is about actually the society of Latvia and the fear of terrorism. In Latvia, people fear terror much more than they do Russia. There have been a couple of research done on this, and statistically, about 45% of people roughly say that Russia is a threat. About 70 say that terrorism is a threat in Latvia. And this is mostly thanks to the stories in media, in my opinion, because there is no real terrorism threat in Latvia. But still, people perceive it as a big threat. Talking about all the stereotypes about, well, radical Islam and terrorists in general, there's been a lot of studies done since 2001 on, well, terrorism, on radical Islam, and the causes of terrorism. And it's extremely complicated. For example, 9/11. After 9/11, Bush said that terrorists hate our freedoms, democracy, and so on, and this is why they did it. That's not the case. There's been a lot of research behind, essentially, people have researched the speeches, the writings of Osama bin Laden and other people who committed 9/11. And so what were the real reasons why they did it? First of all, well, essentially U.S. presence in Saudi Arabia, U.S. support to Israel. Another reason was essentially a NATO mission against Kosovo, Russian mission against Chechnya, basically Muslim region, Muslim countries. And the most interesting thing that some of the people who committed 9/11, who organized 9/11, they were not religious at all. So this radical Islam, this religious dimension, it is just one part of motivation why people commit acts of terror. In the movie, it was shown essentially the people who, well, were part of al-Nusra. Their first motivation for committing, well, essentially martyrdom, suicide, bombing missions was also Islam. But there's been a lot of research done in both Iraq, Afghanistan, and in Syria. Basically, when you capture a suicide bomber or a essentially member of a terrorist organization, basically people try to understand and basically talk to them, understand their motivations, why, well, essentially why they wanted to blow themselves up. Because you have to understand the motivation of your enemy if you want to defeat him in the field or prevent suicide attacks. And the motivations are various. Yes, there are people who are motivated by essentially religious doctrines and religious ideas. Another thing is essentially, well, you could say hatred towards something that Assad has done, that the US government has done. You saw the video of essentially a bomb destroying a building, killing 10 people. They talked about a small girl being pulled out of rubble. This causes emotions. This causes essentially people feel this need to avenge their family members, people from their city, people from their religious group, ethnic group, whatever. That's also another motivation. Then we have some very interesting reasons. One thing is a lot of people who commit suicide bombing, they have no choice. Their family members have been kidnapped. They have been pressured into, by some manipulations, to commit essentially suicide attacks. Another thing is, which is also very interesting, pride. A lot of young men in Iraq, in Syria, and Afghanistan, they have been unemployed. They have not had, they haven't been able to marry, they haven't had a place in life. And suddenly you're recruited by al-Nusra, Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, and you are given a mission, a purpose, essentially a life goal that will lead you to an afterlife in heaven, and 47 virgins and so on. Basically, you are given a essentially fulfillment of your life that you didn't have before. Another reason, and I'm going to end soon, is essentially, well, essentially, if you are a member of a clan or tribe in Afghanistan and in Iraq and Syria a little bit less, essentially, this is essentially, if a member of your clan is killed, this is also a question of pride. Another thing, well, actually, one more thing which I'm going to end with. Why are some of the people who are making the bombs, what is their motivation? Essentially, who are building suicide vests, who are building the cars. What is their motivation behind it? And this is funny. When you ask them why they're doing this, they want to make enough money so that they will be able to move away from Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, to Europe, to United States. They might attack, well, they might make bombs that will be used to attack US soldiers in Afghanistan and in Iraq, but their real motivation is that they just want to get away from the countries they're in to the countries that they are essentially, that their bombs are used to attack. So this is a very, very complex, very diverse problem. There are no black and white perspectives, and it's very, very easy to demonize and well, essentially create this other group, terrorists, that are essentially they are nothing like us, totally opposite. But it's a very complex picture, and essentially if you want to well, defeat Islamic State, defeat Taliban, defeat terrorists, we have to understand, well, what are they really like? All these stereotypes. And,
Okay, Martin, while you have a microphone, then we talked about good media, and all of you, can you estimate, do we have good media here in Latvia? Do we have responsible channels that just not, you know, will print a stranded baby as everybody else did, which you, like, editorially not printed, for example?
Well, very briefly, this is a problem with media all across the world, not only in Latvia. Terrorism is a complex problem, and for politicians, it's very easy to essentially to paint the world in black and white terms. And for society, a lot of people, it's also, well, I'm a unique person. I'm interested in movies like this. I watch a couple of movies. I read on this, and these are complex problems, and you can't really explain them in an, I don't know, a short online article.
But in terms of media?
It's hard to essentially portray and display terrorism, radical Islam in an objective and, well, more or less correct manner.
Anybody? On media?
Let's say something on media. We're looking at the wrong end of it. The media isn't about something out there. It's something about in here, in us. So media reflects in very limited way anything remotely approaching the truth out there. I know that from, as I'm sure everybody on our panel does, from personal experience. The reality that is reflected in the media is of course something completely different, because the media serves the psyche of the population. And I think the real question here is, and that's the media, as you say, everywhere in the world, but the question is really our audience. It would be more interesting certainly for me, with all apologies to everybody here on the stage, to hear your reasons for being here. I mean, that's the interesting thing. Why on earth would you come out to a film like this? And the answer is, you have an interest. You're intelligent. You're fascinated. You want to orient yourself in the space in which we live. And this is the real media. You're the media. The other stuff is fantasy and make-believe.
Rita, please.
Paul, yes, I just wanted to ask you how the media in your country perceived your film. Very interesting to hear.
Well, I have a history with my media, and I don't like my colleague journalists, and they don't like me too much. So it was kind of a lukewarm. And I just want to say that, you know, this film has been in quite a few festivals, and it's, you know, it's been, I wouldn't say praised, but it got good recommendation. But at the same time, I see a difference between the festival audiences and the festivals and the television. They seemed nervous about showing this film. They seemed like afraid that they somehow is doing Al-Qaeda propaganda, and that's, you know, that's the big paradox I've noticed these months that I have been showing the film in cinemas and in television.
Paul, we discussed before that you have few technicalities that involves your precautions with content like this. Can you elaborate that with the audience here?
You mean how I'm careful with the material?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
special attention from authorities and stuff.
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, you know, I have certain, let's say, rules. I don't want anyone to do any operation, of course, because of me being there with a camera. I don't want my films somehow to help anyone to kill some other people. So I had to take, you know, just filming, I had to take precautions not to, let's say, identify places, exact locations. Also, because there's a British convert there, we showed the film. It was screened in a London theater, and after the screening, there was two middle-aged men who came, approached me, and they showed me their badge and said they were from the anti-terrorist units. And they were interested in one person in the film, and I said, who could that be? And they said, we want to see the whole film. And I said, you can go on iTunes. And then they said they wanted the material. And I say, no, you're not getting the material. And thank God we have a Supreme Court decision in Norway that protects documentary material like journalistic material. So I mean, unless they break into my house and all other houses of the people involved in the film, they're not going to get the film.
So, and Paul, while editing, he doesn't do it on the computer that is switched to internet. That's also.
Yeah,
so
you know, I mean, everything with internet, it will be possible to copy, of course. You don't upload a file that you don't want NSA to have. I mean, that's just standard thing. So you have to be careful. I mean, as I said, my material doesn't have anything of intelligence value, but it's a matter of principle. I don't give the intelligence, you know, any material.
Okay, a question. It's random. Answer anyone if it has anyone to say. You have anything to add, Hassan, please?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
How they get their wife there? They have a list of women and they offer for them. How they choose a woman? Because they were very happy. They were talking about ladies, about heaven full of women, and so on.
What do you mean? The wives they marry?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a very old-fashioned view of this. You know, when Abu Basir, when he wanted to get married, he told his fellow soldiers, I want to get married. Do you know any girl who want to get married? And they asked around in their village. And then at one stage, they arranged for him to meet the family. And he meets the family and talking with the father and the mother. And, you know, after a long conversation, then the girl is supposed to come and serve coffee. And that is his chance to have a look at the girl and she can look at him. And he was going to this family, you know, many times, you know, talking with them, and the other soldiers were complaining that he got back very late, and he waked them up and they say, I think she's in love with me and these things. So it's a kind of very time-consuming process, and then they agree and they get married. So.
Thank you, Paul. Yuri?
Hassan, how time-consuming was your process of finding your wife?
23 years. My question before was that weren't we, until we saw this movie, weren't we thirsty for some kind of normality, some kind of human sense of it all? That this film was supposed to be filmed, that we were able to see that there's still some good in it. Anyone, Martin?
So usually the first reaction to address the terrorism problem is essentially to jail them, to kill them, to essentially to isolate them from society. In Denmark, in a city, one of the biggest cities in Aarhus, what they have been doing it for the last, I think, 2.5 years, they've created a program for people who have been radicalized in Aarhus and people who have fought in Syria and who have returned back to Aarhus, which with the main goal of the program is to rehabilitate them. Essentially, they are given psychologists, they are given mentors, they're given mentors from their own local community who have already essentially Muslims or immigrants and so on who have integrated in society, and they're trying to help these people, not to kill them, not to put them in jails, but trying to rehabilitate them. Because and this is unpopular opinion, but the Western societies themselves, to some extent, create essentially homegrown terrorists. Because a lot of people who commit terror acts, they have been ostracized as kids, they have been rejected by their peers, essentially, and they haven't been able to fit in the Western societies. And well, basically, there are essentially a couple of options. One thing, you can put them in jail for a couple of years when they've done some small crime. And then, most likely, when they come out of the jail, they'll be even more alienated. They might go to Islamic State, become jihadists, and so on. Or you can try to rehabilitate and help them truly. And this is what Aarhus has done. But this is a very, very complex opinion that would not be sort of acceptable for a lot of people in many societies, essentially trying to essentially help and de-radicalize and essentially aid, spend money on essentially terrorists and radical people.
Thank you, Martin. Anybody else?
I would just like to add and ask a little question to Rita, because you have worked in television and you would know how what the decision of whether to broadcast or not to broadcast this documentary would be. Because I agree with Juris about our audience, because I think some media have tried to be as responsible as they can to show the human face of people. Namely, it's most about refugees in Latvia, and I feel that it hasn't worked. But do you? How do you think? Would you broadcast it, and what would be reaction of Latvian television audience?
Well, this film would have landed on my table because I was commissioning editor for current affairs and documentaries, and I would have broadcasted it. And I think that Latvian public television has a history of at least trying to portray the world in its complexity. You remember there was a LTV-produced documentary on refugees that was called Fear, trying to get to the very bottom of the problem, where it comes from, why are we scared, and also bringing some humanity to the issue. We don't always succeed, but I think there are attempts there, and it's certainly much better than nothing. And when it comes to what I expected when I first watched it on the small screen at home of this film, I actually got exactly what I expected. I expected a human story, and I had it. So thank you.
Well, will it help a bigger part of people? Than they say usually the people that watch documentaries, they're marginal group always, and there's Suicide Squad in Forum Cinemas right now. Maybe it's a better choice, but how do you think the reach of this film, Paul? How far it will reach with its normality and humanity and showing the other side?
Well, it's up to the audience. I don't decide that. I just made a film, so.
I mean, how does it depend on your effort? I mean, will you roam the world with your tape and until everybody's got your idea?
No. I mean, it's I have a reason for making this film. I want to show the other side of the front line. But this is not a crusade, so to say, for me. I mean, if this film doesn't go further than this, that's the end. It's simple as that. I just hope it can inspire someone else to do something similar. Try to show some initiative. Try to go away from the herd. I mean, there's too many documentary filmmakers and journalists are acting like sheeps. They do exactly the same as the people in front of them, or the sheeps in front of them, and maybe someone will try to do something different. That will be a good result.
Well, we are closely running out of time. If you have anything to add or to ask each other, now is the best time. Juris, Aldis, Hossam.
Paul, are you planning to have a next film in the opposite side?
No, because there's a lot of journalists doing the opposite side. And if I can just add one thing, I mean, the film was not about numbers and statistics and these things. I just want to show one number because it's for the most people here, they don't know a lot about Syria. But according to something called Syrian Network of Human Rights, this group, Jabhat al-Nusra, they have in 5 years of war, they have killed less than 400 civilians. The same organization, they say that the regime has killed more than 183,000 civilians. So it's these people, they are not the main perpetrators of civilian death in Syria. That is the regime, which is killing more civilians than anyone else, including Islamic State.
Thank you, Paul. Juris, you had something to add?
Well, I really would like to, if I'm permitted and if the audience would permit me, to ask, would you be willing to raise your hands if the film makes you less fearful or more fearful? And the first question is, those who feel when the film is finished that you are, the level of fear has somewhat decreased, if you would raise your hands, for whom the film means less fear. And thank you very much. And those of you who feel that after seeing the film you have greater fear. Thank you very much for your.
And we have this non-dualistic phase right now. There's a whole middle part.
Who is completely
neutral.
Neutral.
Here we go. Here we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's a question for you? I mean,
Well,
please.
about media, I'm not well read enough in Latvian media, and I don't have TV at home. Sometimes I find something from some Latvian reaction to the facts.
And what kind of reaction is that?
In the internet, I believe we need good expertise, and here you see before you some of the people who could give this expertise. But then the main question is our attitude to the problems of refugees at this stage. That's the main thing. That's our responsibility to Europe and to this planet and to God.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Paul, thank you. And good luck with the film. And thank you. This.